we're very grateful again to the organizers of the ASSW for letting us have an early career session here this week, and we're going to take this opportunity at the beginning of this roundtable to tell you what we've done so far as creating this organization, and then we would like to open it up to you because you're the users of this service, and we're going to do whatever we can to provide what you need, but we need to know what you need. We have the basic framework, but we're ready to do whatever it is that all of you want, because Uga and I have put a lot of time into this, and we're only 2 people, so we need to know what you guys want. We have a wonderful logo that was designed by a friend of mine, so that was step 1. And then, there we go. Our mandate, so the one sentence thing, why we exist and what our whole purpose is to raise the profile of early career polar scientists, as I mentioned before, and then to provide a continuum, so a continuing legacy of polar researchers that are trained to think not only interdisciplinarily, but internationally. And so part of what we want to discuss here this afternoon is how we can actually start finding these international collaborations and some of the other issues such as funding and things that come into play with those. And we're going to come back to this slide again at the end and talk about this in a little bit more detail. So we have a website courtesy of my department chair. I'm a new faculty member at Kent State University in Ohio and a microbiologist. But my department chair, when I pitched him this idea, loved it and really wanted to do whatever he could, so he donated the funds for us to have a web designer. So you can find that website address at www.kent.edu/polar, and Uga is going to pass out some small merchandising material, if you will, that I put together. There's magnets for your filing cabinets, business cards with our website address, and then you'll notice some people, including our wonderful mentors and Dave Carlson, have these great Apex stickers on their badges. So be sure to mark it if you can. So the website has a bunch of different components to it. We have an about page that is translated into several different languages by current members already. And obviously, if there's a language that isn't there that you would like to have, please let us know, and we can try to do that. It would be great if we had some Inuit languages as well. It would be wonderful. We've got several different parts, so your basic websites always have the news, the events, and probably what's going to get the most attention is the jobs and opportunities section, as well as an area where you can post funding sources. So the SCAR fellowships and things like that would be posted underneath there, and then links, and then per Oog's recommendation, a recent publication, so you can put your thesis and your dissertation up there, as well as any new papers that you put out that you want to kind of, market, if you will. We also have RSS feeds, so from the IPY website. So anytime there's new news or events that are posted to the IPY site, they automatically come to this site as well. So it's a one-stop shop for early career scientists. The basic membership page or the welcome page links you to all these different things that we have, including a wonderful new feature we just added thanks to our supporters. So if there's people in the room who would like to be supporters, let us know and we can probably display your logo if you want. So you can go to all these different things, and perhaps the best part of this whole website and the whole reason and the whole way we can actually start networking is through this discussion forum that we've set up. It works just like any online discussion forum where you can post your comments or ask people different questions and things like that. And so there's various different discipline discussion groups. So if you've got a research problem on permafrost, for example, you can post it in there and other members can come on and look and maybe they have the answer for you. Different field sites, you can list both Arctic and Antarctic field sites. So for myself and probably Jill, the first time I went to the Dry Valleys, I really had no idea what to expect in Antarctica, and so it'd be great if that kind of information was listed on there, so when people go, they know, okay, I don't need a rain jacket in the Dry Valleys, but I do need, a pillow or whatever. So just the simple little things like that. Or there's also a section for research tips. So for example, I do stream work, so if I'm measuring the pH of a stream, what do I do if my pH meter freezes? The small little things like that that can actually make your life a little bit easier. And then of course our upcoming Apex information, and then some other areas where you can post your CV if you're looking for a job, so when senior scientists come onto the site, they can look for you and find you, as well as tips on how to look for a job, or different things like when I applied for my faculty job, that I had to write a teaching philosophy. I don't know what that is. So here you have the opportunity to post,
Not
you know.
anyone else.
Okay, good. Well, whatever I wrote must have worked, right? But so here, you know, we can share those types of things with each other, so that, you know, we really have an idea of what we're doing, and because we're all joined together with this interest in cold regions, it's a pretty neat feature, I think. We're also very much connected to the International Youth Steering Committee. Just a little history on Apex. Both Ug and I are members of the International Youth Steering Committee. He's the representative for Germany and I'm the representative for the US. And when the Youth Steering Committee formed, we were both under the impression that it would be targeted for early career scientists, but they opened up the scope a lot more. So it's all students, and as well as early career scientists. So we, because of a wonderful request from Dave, we're asked to create a special area for just early career scientists, because we have very different needs and desires than say someone in 4th grade, for example. So that's where this came out of. But we're very much connected to these guys. In fact, the really neat thing to link younger students, early career scientists, and teachers together is this forum we have where the teachers can actually log on and search for early career scientists in their area or in an area of expertise. So for example, if I'm a teacher in New Hampshire, I can go on the website and search for early career scientists in New Hampshire that would be willing to either come in and give a talk to my class, or would be able to do some kind of online mentoring, or give some expertise and things, and just kind of to start early career faculty doing outreach at the beginning of their career, because it's such an important and oftentimes rewarding experience to do this mentoring for younger children, to start that at a younger age as well. So that opportunity is present here, and we're all linked together, which is great. Just some future things that we're planning on doing. We have a couple things lined up, but we want the meat to come from you guys. We're having a bunch of different meetings. We are hoping to work with IASC and SCAR to plan the 2008 St. Petersburg conference, and to have some early career sessions or things like that in with that, which would be great. We're also working with some of the young researchers at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks to put together a early career polar scientist workshop to kind of launch this society, this association. And NSF is extremely interested in this, and we will be able to provide funding for lots of, mainly unfortunately US scientists from the lower 48 states to come up to the Arctic, as well as a number of international people. And we're working with Rhianne Salmon at the IPO office to try and get some British Council support to bring some of those folks into this conference as well. And we would love it if, you know, there's obviously a large international component, and we can try and help fund some of you of that. And I'm also working with Sheldon Drabot and Sue Weiler, and they have an NSF project funded for the next generation of polar researchers, and it's an international conference, and it's for young researchers to come in, and it's a 4-day workshop, and we'll pass around some of these flyers. I've got flyers for everything. And it's a great opportunity, and it's specifically for people who are just finishing their PhD, or are just about to finish their PhD, and who are doing polar research during the IPY. So go onto their website and check it out. They're obviously linked with us. We wrote a supplement to NSF, and we're able to get funding for some of the Apex stuff that we're trying to do, which is great. So we're slowly and surely getting funding to make sure this is going to get off the ground. And then another thing we're working on is to have different early career polar scientist sessions at major conferences. We did this at AGU this year in San Francisco, and it was a great success. There was over 75 young scientists that came and wanted to hear more. So if we can do that kind of thing, we can network of all of us together at various conferences, as well as get new blood into the associations. So that's our basic plan for now. Just because I think a lot of face time is what we really need. So here's just some layouts of how we've structured the Apex organization so far. And this is pretty much Oog and I, and thankfully Odd helped us this morning to figure out some of this stuff. There's two bodies basically that compose the Apex. It's the steering committee, which would be, you know, Oog and I, and if anyone else is interested in really helping us put forth the direction of this organization. And then we also have the organization broken down into disciplines, simply because it needs to happen that way because of the website posting and organizational structure and things like that. But we're not breaking it into Arctic versus Antarctic because we want it to be a bipolar community. And then we have an advisory committee made up of Ode and Pat and members from the U Steering Committee and Rianne and several other international figures. We're hoping to link to SCAR and IASC soon, and I think that's going to be happening hopefully soon, as well as to other international organizations. And we've been able to meet with a lot of you this week, and it's been really great, and to tie all of your efforts together with ours and really make one large network. So the basic structure, and I know it's kind of scary looking. This is just purely for organizational purposes. We have me at the top. No, I'm just. But we have it broken down into 6 major disciplines. So geosciences, and then it has various subdisciplines because there's so many things in geosciences. We have a social sciences division, which is very important. We put air and space together into one. Biology, which is broken up into both terrestrial and marine because they're different beasts, if you will, and oceanography, and then an education and outreach portion. And we do have a few people that have stepped up to the plate and volunteered to be discipline coordinators and to help really make sure that the needs of people in every discipline are met, both for postings on the website as well as what we need to succeed and to be good, strong polar scientists. So that's coming together slowly. We do need a treasurer who's willing to do some fundraising. That'd be a fun job, I'm sure. And of course, this organization is not just a 2-person effort. There's an awful lot of people who've helped us. Both Sue and Sheldon, and of course Dave in the IPO office have been great. Martin Jeffries from the University of Alaska Fairbanks and now at NSF was with us at the conception of this plan, so it's great. And of course our new mentors, Pat and Ode, we very much appreciate what you've done here, and lots of other folks. So it's a team effort. And now we want to know from you what you want us to do. Not everybody all at once.
I think, yeah, sure.
Unfortunately, I have to go at 4, so I'm saying this now. My name is Marianne Stenbeck. I'm a fellow here at the Dickey Center, but I'm essentially at McGill University in Montreal. I would be happy to volunteer to help you with things such as teaching philosophy, preparation of promotion and tenure dossiers and so on, because it's becoming more and more difficult and detailed every year. I have sat for, I don't know, 10, 12, 13 years on my department's promotion and tenure committee. I sit on hiring committee. I have some we used to just write a little letter. Now they want this and this. I have some idea, and I'd be very happy to volunteer and help you with that.
Thank you. We're writing that down. We'll take you on.
2 smaller comments. One is about the little boxes, the big chart with all the boxes with differences, different disciplines. I seem to notice that at the social sciences there is no little box for history and archaeology, which is disciplines that contain harbors a lot of polar
There's,
research.
it's anthropology and sociology,
Yeah.
economics and political science,
Yeah.
native studies and languages, and northern studies. Arthur Mason, who is a social scientist, helped us put those categories together. But by all means, if you think there should be another one,
Oh yes, I know that you in the U.S. you regard archaeology as being a sub-discipline of anthropology, but I think in most parts of the rest of the
Okay.
world, archaeology is something separate from anthropology.
Arthur's from
Is that-
Canada actually, but you know.
Should I translate that by I'm Dag and I want to take over the responsibility of filling
I'm
this
not
little
saying
box?
Because- what would you like the box? History and what?
And archaeology.
History and archaeology.
I have a question, Jennifer. How do you envision these different sub-disciplines participating in APEX? Are they, someone in charge of these sub-disciplines have to go out and attract members from
Exactly.
Because it just seems like it's a...
To go out and attract members, because oftentimes when you go to a conference, it's discipline specific. And so that's the point. So we can have, self-discipline or discipline coordinators go to these conferences and recruit new members and have gatherings, and organize things just like what we've got here at the SSW. So that's the vision for now.
In everything that's been associated with this conference, we've tacked on the words "and engineers," but that's omitted here, and I'm curious what you think is best.
Actually, I'm an engineer. I'm an environmental engineer, so I still consider myself a scientist. But if there's I think it's kind of too late in the game to change the name. But we can definitely, in everything we put out, add engineers. I have no problems with that, as well as some other people have mentioned, including alpine scientists into this. And I also agree that that is wonderful. And by no means are we limiting people to be polar scientists by this organization. It's just it's coming out as part of the IPY and to create this legacy. So we're definitely hoping to include. Would you like to see a sub-discipline?
I would
Would you
actually,
like to
because
head it up?
I think I don't know, but I think part of what's unique about doing science in the polar regions is there are some interesting engineering challenges just to do take pH measurements, if you will, and sort of the cross-pollination of ideas in that regard is a good thing.
I think it's a vast question. We talked about it with Jerry recently. It depends on how you look at things. I know for a fact that in AVI, in the research program, and the way it's defined, engineering is definitely acknowledged as one of the major endeavor in the institute, but it is part of the research program as a science discipline. So we could definitely put the name in any correspondence. I personally feel that I have a lot of respect for the engineers because they do understand what I don't. But
That's how we get along.
and they should definitely be involved. But I don't see a conflict personally in this denomination here.
Probably you could say researchers. Yeah, I was trying to avoid my paranoia earlier, but since an engineer brought it up, I clearly endorsed that concept of using the researcher, but we're not suggesting you change your name.
We had these discussions a lot, trying to figure out what to name ourselves, and we can sit and talk about that for the rest of our discussion time, where we can actually get to some things you want us to do. So.
I'm Lawrence Hakkerboert, and I'm co-chairing the scientific committee of the Open Science Conference in St. Petersburg. And I would like to hear from you in which way you would like to participate in this conference. Would you have, for instance, an own session, or would you like to be in all the sessions, one or two early career scientists? Do you have any ideas about it?
We've talked a little bit, and with both Volker and Colin, I think it's important to have both an Antarctic and an Arctic scientist, young scientists on the organizing committee, and I think we've been volunteered to do that. But I think another thing that's important is we don't want to separate ourselves from the other science that's going on, and we had that here today, but that's just because of how the different talks work. But Karen was a great example of what we would love to see a young scientist actually being given a leadership role. So perhaps the sessions that are coordinated have a senior scientist and a young scientist doing the chairing of the session and putting together the reports and things like that to really start us integrating into these leadership type of roles so that we can learn how to do this stuff so that 10 years from now we're supposed to chair a session and we have no idea how to do it. So to start us really getting that experience early on, and I know that's something that I would really like to see. I'm sure many of you here have ideas of what you would like too.
So yeah, I think Jenny, if the question is, do you have a plan? I think yes, we have a plan. The plan is not ready, and we have to. I think we have to get back and read. Colin made that clear that we have to read the education and outreach policy framework document of SCAR. I think that's how it's called. And to kind of match with the objectives, we have to do a background. Go back to read a bit of background literature on the topic. We have then to wait, this network is new. We have to wait until we get a bit of feedback. I know that the deadline is June, but we have to wait until we get a bit of feedback from the members to kind of initiate a discussion on that. So that's basically the plan, is to set up the network, get the new members, and get a few people that we identify as interested in terms of giving us feedback on what we could do at the conference. Jenny mentioned some ideas, which I think are really good. I'm sure there are going to be lots of other ideas popping up. So we want to compile that in a document, which we will then submit to the organizing committee.
Okay, let's agree on the fact that you will send in a plan before, well, let's say somewhere in May.
Yeah.
So that we have some time to discuss that too.
Yeah, that's the plan. It should be around 70 pages.
Yeah, because we
You're right.
Yeah.
we have to be ready before the, let's say, beginning of July.
Yeah.
So don't make it too long.
I completely agree that I think the young scientists should be fully incorporated into the science process. But I also think it would be valuable to at least have some venue to get the young scientists together all in one spot, whatever that happens to be. Because I know at previous workshops and conferences there have been young scientists, and we've sort of seen one another floating around, but there's never been specific time to actually come together as a group. So I completely agree with you with the science part, but
I think
having
that's-
some sort of additional.
And what we did here last night, I know some of you weren't able to come because of the storm, but we just all got together and had pizza. Something that simple, and now we know each other a little bit better, and it's just much better. And so or a round table discussion like this too is very helpful.
You should also account with the fact that St. Petersburg is very expensive. And if you have members in St. Petersburg, Russians for instance, you could try to get accommodation through your members so that this conference, participating in this conference, is not so expensive.
It's a great idea.
I think that is something that the IPA is used to do during the permafrost conferences, and as used to to rely on the students on site to actually house the stuff. So that's definitely something that would pop up, and that's how it's going to happen. I think at the 9th International Conference on Permafrost, to take an example. And I think that, to come back to your idea, Karen, I think that is something that is going to pop up all the time, to bring up a conference with young scientists to get them together. So I say, yes, let's do it, and let's do big stuff. I say, let's not plan on doing it for the next 2 months. I think it is something that will necessarily be a very nice achievement, and it should be in some ways the final goal of this network kind of thing. But it will take a lot of time to get, I think the first objective is to get this network, reach a sustainable kind of state. And then we can think of but I do agree.
I think it could be something as simple as, on our discussion forum, just putting in, what conferences are you going to, and, are you looking for a roommate, or things like that can be done all here and very easily. And I think that would be a pretty simple way of making that happen.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily mean to create an entirely new conference or workshop. I meant to have some sort of venue within the bigger conferences.
Yeah, like
That's
a
what
social
we are
gathering
anything.
of some sort each.
And I think
Yeah,
that's,
or-
that's a
Like we
perfect
did last
start.
night.
Yeah, that's a perfect start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
AGU would be perfect.
Well, we did that at this last one, and it was a pretty good success. So
Yeah.
we're hoping to continue that stuff, and EGU and, you know, any other major conference. And if you're going to a conference and you want to do one of these things, you know, we've done it a few times now and can tell you how to make it happen pretty easily and, you know, give
Just
you
have
the
to get-
magnets or whatever you want if you want to.
Just get beer.
Okay, pretty much.
So could I formally invite you then to the Fairbanks conference 1 week before the SCAR conference? And maybe we can arrange a round-trip ticket from Fairbanks to Leningrad, St. Petersburg, and back to wherever your home base is, so that you could attend both. And that would truly be, our Permafrost conference is bipolar too. It's just not the
Then
order.
vote for the price so low.
That would be great.
But in any event, and keep in mind this workshop that's coming up in Fairbanks in September. Also the Arctic Science Conference is in Alaska in September, and
It
hopefully
actually
they'll
starts the day
dovetail.
after that one's
Yeah,
over.
yeah. So there's
we've
many
made sure.
opportunities
Yeah.
to share, you know, experiences in Alaska. But I as Perrin is going to be responsible for getting the young people to participate in the Fairbanks conference. We've talked to IASC and SCAR about a joint session in Fairbanks that would also participate in St. Petersburg. So we really would like to encourage as many people, including all the engineers. The Permafrost conference is both engineering and science driven. So it's a one time every 4 or 5 years that we truly get the two communities together. So it's a good experience for young people also. So I'll say.
Great.
If we have raised fingers right now, I think one thing that would be good is to get back to the mandate slide, which Jenny has up already. And that's one thing we've done in the Permafrost network, I think, and that helped us greatly, is actually to get a few people around the table and to look at the table and just look like very doubtful, like Lawrence is doing now when he's looking at the statement, and just kind of provide some new ideas about what should be actually the statement. So I think that there's definitely room for changes here.
I don't know, one suggestion maybe, are you talking about like wording or contribution?
What? Yep. It's
And all the bullets that go under
okay.
this too. You
You
know,
know,
so
I was just saying, instead of raise the profile, maybe integrate, you know, early career sciences, because it seems like all the things that we're trying to do is to integrate us into the community more seamlessly, you know, have us involved in the planning of the science, which sounds like a good idea. You know, have us have a forum for interacting with other members. You know.
I think that what we meant in some ways, in terms of, I guess there's the integrating young scientists and then there's integrating young scientists with the entire community, and I think that's what we meant by continuum, but that might not be clear, is that is provide a continuum between young scientists and senior scientists. So I don't know if that's...
Yep.
Excuse me. I worked on a thesis that was very classical, and had a tough time getting a job right afterwards. I bring it up mostly because I feel like the field of polar science is going through an enormous change. Really, the perspective is changing, the perspective on the world. And that change, something that's forcing that change is the research in the polar regions. In the talks, I didn't hear any kind of recognition of that, reflection of that. I heard talks about what I would consider fairly classical subjects. I think there ought to be something that would encourage students to do what I would call armchair theses. Thinking of the world in a different way, thinking of what it would be like without a summer ice cover on the Arctic, thinking of what it would be like without as much ice on in the continental, on Greenland and in Antarctic. You ought to be more capable of thinking of what things would be like in those situations. You're not as ingrained, you're not tied to the old way of thinking about things. One of the jobs that I had in the 70s, I can remember oceanographic ships coming in, and the geologists would literally sprint for phones because plate tectonics had just changed their field, and suddenly they were looking at the world in a different way. And I remember envying them and thinking, gosh, maybe I went into the wrong field, biological oceanography. Maybe I should have gone into geological oceanography. I'm an Arctic oceanographer. And now I feel like I'm in a situation where the world is opening up in my lap, where just because of the field that I've been in for so long, that things are changing completely, that the changes in the Arctic are just overwhelming. Well, again, I'd like to see you find some way to encourage students to take on more responsibility there. Jim White yesterday talked about take some responsibility for your measurements, for what you know, and there ought to be some way to encourage that.
Somewhat to that point, I think the theme for the workshop in September, where we're launching the organization, is the new faces or new perspectives on polar research, and so we're planning our sessions to be very new in thought, I think, where we're putting biologists together with economists in the same session, and things like that, to start really making it interdisciplinary, and not just the same interdisciplinary where you're putting a chemist and a geologist together in the same room, really cross-cutting with very new disciplines, and I think that might help. And if you have any other suggestions, please let us know. We'd love to incorporate those ideas.
Yeah, to follow up on that, I think I do agree with your comments, and I think that's precisely the role of the network. I'm not sure we're gonna see results immediately, but that's the purpose of bringing people together and having forums of discussion. I think it can only do good and open people's eyes on other disciplines. Now, I think that there's this other thing, which is to open your eyes like that, you need a bit of perspective. And I think that's what we are now trying to do in the Permafrost Network with Jerry for the conference, is to actually get the former young scientists in the IGY or a bit later to actually bring us some perspective on what was science. And when you are saying, like, it's questions that are out of our mind, it's not very classical. I'm asking questions that are science, but maybe on the side of science, but which bring a lot of perspective, I think, to the science discipline. I'm talking being a young scientist in the 60s, that was like one of the suggested themes, or permafrost in the Cold War, or some kind of thing like that. It is just an illustration, but I think that we need to get those mentoring under this kind of fashion to actually bring some perspective and open our mind. I think that's a fundamental part of it.
So besides conferences, what do you want us to do? We're at your service.
That's one thing, if I may say, what we want to do is that I think I asked Scar and I asked Kaz in mind for Arctic Science Summit Week to actually make this event an annual, not annual, sorry, that's my accent. Event within the Arctic Science Summit Week. And you notice this year there were some presentations and there was a roundtable like now. Obviously, like the people that are going to show up at this roundtable maybe next year are going to be different. So the follow-up will maybe be difficult to do. Now there's going to be Apex in charge of that. The question being, if we want to organize something next year, you will have a forum to evaluate this program. But I think there is room for changes, room for making that better. I think we had mentors that helped us out, Pat and Odd. It would be great if, for instance, they could bring us some perspective, as I was just saying, on some polar science, give a talk, or I don't want to give you more work to do, but it's just give a talk on some kind of a extra dimension or on polar science, or that's just an idea. But I think we have to think on the format of this day for the next year.
I'd just like to raise a challenge, and well, in fact, ask you or ask the collective group here how you might, how you would propose to face this challenge. The reality is that you know, puppies become dogs and old dogs, and young people, that's right. It will not be long before you are no longer early career scientists. So it will be terribly important for that continuity. And I bring up the word that odd has been challenging those people who are concerned with the Arctic Observing Networks, is this issue of sustaining the Arctic Observing Networks. So there's tremendous excitement at IPY, and it seems like everyone is saying let's have a youth group or a young career science group and so on. One of the challenges will be to build into your organization. And I love the acronym APEX. I mean, but you will go to the apex, but you've got to have some people coming in at the bottom to climb to the top too.
So
That's going to be quite a big challenge, so the continuity, the sustainability of this grand idea is going to be a big challenge.
And we're starting to think about that kind of thing too. And one thing that I've been hoping will happen, I guess, is that, you know, I'm a new faculty member and I'm a member of APEX, and I have grad students. So they will be members of APEX, and so and their students will, you know, like this big tree, if you will, of, you know, so hopefully current members will be able to help sustain the network with their students and so on and so forth up the ladder. And I think also along the lines of sustainability, it's important for us to be closely related with SCAR and IASC and some of these other, you know, really fundamental organizations, so that, you know, they also keep us in mind, and that we're continue to be sponsored by them and things throughout the years. And I think that's very important and is something we've been working on this week and hope to continue to with your help, of course.
Yeah, I think you haven't seen my Schwarzenegger slide, but in my presentation, but he was addressing basically these issues. That, as Jenny said, we are hoping, but you need to put some mechanisms in place to actually groom that. It is a crucial issue, and we need to put some mechanism and some rewarding mechanisms too. That is, you need to get people a reward or some prestige, or I don't know how you terms that, but you need to get people to have to give an incentive for climbing up the apex ladder. I don't know if you can say that, but yeah. So there need to be something put in place. I think, but there's room now to think about it.
Rachel, before you leave, I think it looks like you're leaving. Rachel was very instrumental in making sure that this workshop happened and helping us organize it. So I just would like to really thank you.
Thanks a lot. I've got to get the other half of my cord. I really enjoyed being here and taking part in this, and it was great to actually meet Jenny after so many
Emails and phone calls
yeah.
and whatnot.
But I got to get home because I have an unattended child, and that can only go on for so long, as you know.
Yeah, Dave.
I'm thinking about what Jill said. Sometimes raising the profile is the enemy of integration, because raising the profile becomes pushing forth your best and your brightest and such and such. And you live in a severely competitive environment. I don't think you need more. You know, I really don't think you need more than that. But there's another way to make it work. If you think in a more global sense, in a more long-term sense. I hope you've heard at this conference, and I'm largely at the center of the firestorm, so I realize it, that polar science, it's been a small, I mean, we have to say it's been a small community, is all of a sudden having a bigger and bigger impact. And the organizations feel it, IASC and SCAR feel it. But there's a science infrastructure out there in which polar is still very small compared to space, for example, or compared to chemistry, to take a more classic example. And so a strategy to, and I'll use this word deliberately, infiltrate that network can be a way to both raise your profile and integrate your
your effort, because it's going to take several people, and you're going to have to sort of think about where you want to be and where in the unions and where in the UN and where, you know, but it's a collective thinking about how you want to do it, and it's going to take several people over several times to do it. But I think it's important for this group to do it, because I think polar science needs to raise to that level where you don't have to resort to a polar year every 50 years to remind people that you're treating an urgent part of this. So it's sort of a, I mean, I often do this for myself and for my team and for other committees is, yeah, we don't quite know how we want to work together, and we don't quite know what our terms of reference should be, but one way to learn those things is to take on an external task, and then we succeed or we fail, but at least 6 months later we learn and we say, well, we didn't have enough people, or if we had done this, if we had done that. So, and especially for early in an organization, when a lot of times you can get stalled in thinking about, is this really what I want to do? An external challenge like that. So an external challenge, and you know this because you and I are already sort of thinking of this, an external challenge would be to look at the global science infrastructure, which includes the UN, it includes the science unions, it includes academies in your own countries and institutions, and say, from a revolutionary point of view, how would we insert our voice in what's really a graybeard world, and where would it make the most difference? And you might say, forget the academies, there's nothing going on there, but you might say the UN this or that. So it's sort of a strategic outlook, and there are people who can help you do that. I mean, I see a piece of it, I know Chris sees a lot of it, and there are people who can help you do that. But you could pick a space, and what you'll find out is that those groups are gradually waking up that there's a generational issue, and they're starting to say, well, let's hold an international conference of scientists of the future. But when they do that, they're going back to space, and they're going back to chemistry, and they're going back to the traditional physics disciplines, and they're saying, well, send us your best youth. And what we want them to do is to come somewhere polar and say, send us your best polar youth. And so you've got a lot of things to do. It's early days. I'm sure a lot of you have teaching responsibilities. Many of you have family responsibilities. So it isn't really like you really need one more thing to do, but you could find that it's a way to both raise your profile and, by the way, help the rest of polar science raise their profile, and also integrate, because you can take on a task and you learn from actually doing the task. As I say, succeed or fail. So it's just an idea. Maybe at this stage, late in the day, when if you've still got your mission statement up, you sort of need something else to get you out of the mission statement. So I just offer that as the idea.
That's a great suggestion. I leave it to you to respond. Uh-oh.
Well, if I should make some general comments after all I heard. First of all, amazing enthusiasm and drive. Those are extremely valuable qualities, and that I met with these people. If I should make a small comment to the project presentations, which were very good, except for one thing, for some of them. Try to place your project in a wider scientific or societal context. You went right down the needle to where your interests are. Fine, and you did very well there. But why is your project important? You are here talking to other scientists than your own field. And the other scientists, young scientists, may not understand why this is important, because you didn't tell them. You should also you're selling yourself to the people around you, to society, and ultimately to funding agencies. So you could put it in the concept outreach. Why is your project important beyond the narrow setting? Then I have funding sources put down here. There is an IS funding guide which could possibly be useful, established by the old mentors. Sustainability. Well, you need a home. IS SCAR, in my view, is the logical home for you. These two organizations may require that you have some terms of reference, etc. I leave it to that because you will have to have a dialogue with them, and I believe they are very interested in having you. I know for SCAR, for IS, for instance, they have supported the young scientists to take part in the planning, given travel stipend for that reason, etc. Because they have exactly the same dilemma as you may have in a few years. They become an organization of old, over-established scientists. They need recruitment, fresh blood into their own organization. And that has been realized. My final comment is that this is a fresh organization. You have a concept of initial ideas, plans, structuring. You have a potential large market if we use the business type of thinking. Okay, you need to get back to your potential community of young career scientists. The way business are done in that context is that, okay, you invite on your website for comments, etc. Then you get some short comments of the sort. Perhaps at some stage you can ask people to fill out the form. It can be simple, but a two-page form in which you get people to sit down and think a little bit. What are my interests? How can I use this organization? I mean, they can be figured out. It's a form of market research, so you can improve and adjust to the consumer needs, young career scientists. That is a way of thinking. Funding strategy is one keyword I mentioned. We need to figure out. There are many aspects of that question, but just as one of several keywords I put down. I think this should be sufficient just to give you an idea of the way of thinking.
Great.
I have a brief thought that maybe you can help address. I think one big generational difference between us and sort of the old guard scientists is that we grew up in sort of an internet and computer age, and whereas they had to go out and hold on to a data point with both hands because it was so hard to get and could scrutinize every data point, we're seeing systems now that collect multitudes and gigabytes and terabytes of data, far more than you can look at any individual data point. And where before you looked at phytoplankton under a microscope, now they're recorded on a video plankton recorder at 30 frames a second. And so there's, across all the sciences, and this is true in the Arctic, but it's true every place else as well, there's a whole new way of doing science that is much more related to statistics and to sort of traditional fields of kind of what I think of as electrical engineering. You know, common filters to monitor and predict the results of an instrument that collects data at a high data rate, that can recognize an event without you looking at every individual data point to recognize that event yourself. So it recognizes the event in an automated kind of way. And so we're starting to see all of those changes, and so whether your background is in biology or chemistry or engineering, that's a skill set that I think is essential. And insofar as you could help all of us to sort of gain those skills in a cross-disciplinary way, I think that'd be a good thing to do.
That's a great idea. So maybe one thing we can all do together is to put together a list of skills that you think not only ourselves but our students and students to come should have to work in the new generation of technology. I think that's great. I really do, and it would be great if you helped us start that.
I'm more than happy to help.
Okay, that'd be wonderful. And who knows? Maybe someday, we can get some of these things like as online modules or something through the university or the UArctic program or things like that. I think that would be very, very valuable, and definitely is one thing we can help provide to the community. Great idea.
This was talked about a little bit on the first day when we met for the lunch. But the one of many things that I'm struggling with as a young scientist is that as polar science is becoming more interdisciplinary, more international, the logistics of how to incorporate a truly international project is a bit overwhelming. Personally, I work in Russia, in Siberia most of the time, and so you're trying to write proposals and having collaborators in Russia is great, but in order to figure out things in terms of salaries for your Russian collaborators and things of that nature, I'm curious as to what your thoughts have been in terms of how APEX can help establish a truly international research community.
And that is exactly what we want to figure out. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about today was that in particular. And I'm glad to see so many senior scientists around, particularly those of you who have established international collaborators. And if you can give us advice as to how to do that, and or perhaps to combine that with what Dave suggested, and how do we integrate into our funding sources and make a change so that it's easier to have international collaborations? How do we do that?
I'm going to suggest that you treat yourself to a few what I call excursions or trips to the side. I work for a federal agency. I have a very fortunate job, but my agency doesn't send me here. I don't even tell them that I'm coming here. I'm on vacation. This is, for me, this is interest. It's an essential part of what I do, the way in which I look at the world, but I don't come because I'm encouraged to come or because I'm supported to come. It's, at any rate, the message for you, I guess, is you'll probably see some things that you want to be involved in, and I'd say treat yourself. It's a $1,000 flight ticket. It's $1,000 for a motel room. It's $2,000, and it's well spent.
I actually did that. So I study life in extreme environments and biogeochemistry and nitrogen requirements. And there was a conference in Kamchatka, Russia a few years ago. And I'm like, I don't know anything about thermophilic organisms because they were having this conference there. And so I went, and now I'm working on samples from the Uzon caldera in Kamchatka, Russia. So, and luckily with my current situation, my startup package was quite good. So they can send me samples and I can actually do this stuff. And so once I get the preliminary data, then you can go and write the proposal to do more and things like that. So that's how that's how I've been doing that angle. And so I have collaboration in Kamchatka now. But I think you're exactly right, and I think that's a great suggestion.
So maybe like as a group, APEX, we can treat ourselves, as some of these different areas of interest come up. Maybe at one of the conferences, we invite somebody from a different discipline or who exists under a different infrastructure to come speak to, if we have a session, speak to our session and raise their awareness of the science that we're doing, and at the same time, use them as a resource to learn how maybe that traditional institute or that traditional organization or that funding agency operates, so that it's kind of like a win-win.
Sounds great.
And if you need names of an organization to put down on your card, put down Apex. I put down your Arctic Institute of North America. That's not who I work for. It's an organization that I belong to.
Yeah, I want to come back to what Karen said, and I think that was a great. I noted it down, Jill. So I'm definitely going in the report to the big boss over there. I think that's perfectly right. But what is problematic is we can reach out to Russia. Let's put the real word. What is difficult, and I think Nicole might be aware of that because we work on a project that has very large Russian involvement. What is difficult, I think, is the other way around. Is Russia to get involved in the network, the Russians to actually provide feedback in the network, and you probably saw have a large number of Russian members in the network. Now, that's not saying that Russians are providing a lot of feedback. So it's a constant effort. The constant effort must be done on our side. That's my perspective on that, but that might not be the only one. And we have to set our expectations not to, and that's why we don't want to look really over the top and do that. I think a true achievement of this network would be really to be truly international and to have involvement from China, from Russia, and that is the most difficult thing to achieve in my perspective. So we have to brainstorm on things to do that. One thing that I realized is that the system is different, and being a student there, so student or early career science is different. The hierarchical system, which is not the same as here, and it is easy to reach out to the young polar scientists by going to the faculty members. So that's a target, I think, in the Russian system. It's not the only one, and there might be other ways, but that's definitely something we have to think in our strategy.
Has there been a concerted effort within your management structure to identify people in charge in a truly international way?
We're working on it. That's one of the reasons why we haven't, launched this network, is because we are trying to find discipline coordinators, if you will, and leadership roles from lots of different countries. I could go out and get all my friends to do it, but then it would be the U.S. Apex, and that's not what we want. We want to avoid that at all costs. So this is a great opportunity. We've got a Korean young scientist here, and I think it would be absolutely wonderful to give you, some kind of leadership role if you're interested. And and I'm sure lots of you have colleagues as well that are international in scope. We're hoping to get a lot of Russian, obviously, input, and we're trying to meet people as we go, but we're depending on you guys too to help us really make this an international thing, because that's the only way it's going to survive, and that's the way it's going to be best.
Can I ask a hard question?
Uh-oh. You can ask it. I don't know if I can answer it.
Why would somebody join APEX?
I can give you the answer by telling you the statistics on the Permafrost Young Researchers website, on the frequentation on the pages of the website. Number one, job, 95% of the visits. So that's precisely what's gonna bring people to the website. If it's correctly done and correctly centralized, the job offers for the Polar Network, and if it gets together things from Arctic Info, Cryolist, and all these things together and put them on a website, I think I could put you like a nice little sentence to tell you we're gonna love each other and get together, but it is.
But we don't love each other.
We don't love each other.
We
We
don't.
said it last time, Jill. Yeah, that's true. No, but that's a true first real incentive.
Right.
And now.
That's what I was thinking, is that there's a reason why somebody,
Yeah.
they want something out
Yeah,
of
yeah,
it.
yeah, it's a
If
service.
they're sitting in a nice job and they're doing what they want to do, what they studied, in the area that they want to be in, if they want to be in Greenland, if they want to be in Antarctica, then why would they come to the
Yeah.
site?
Well,
They're just going to
See-
move on.
No, I disagree, actually.
Day two of your job is when reality hits you. How do I work internationally? How do I negotiate a startup package? Where do I find partners to do this? How do I negotiate the promotion and tenure system? How do I try to work cross-disciplinary when I'm stuck in a chemistry department teaching chemistry? That's where, sorry folks, that's where reality hits. And that might be, you may hook them through the job part.
Exactly.
But
That's where they-
then I
that's the
think
service.
That's
sharing
exactly what's
information at that level is, you know, I wish I had it, seriously.
And
Exactly, let me.
you can expect a wide array of persons. I think exactly as they say, you get a hook, which is the job, the service, the newsletter, whatever info stuff. But then you get a wide array of people. People that want to get involved in this, in that, in providing info there. They're actually coming from the jobs, actually coming for the members list. They're actually calling because they want to connect with a version, some not, some. It's actually very difficult to manage actually.
And ask you for advice and help in the same way that you are asking us, senior science, for help. But I think that the weight of them asking you and bringing you on the train that started for 3 or 4 years ago with the ACA and now with the instrument puller here, they will need you. So that's why you should join the.
If you build it, they will come. Is that the theory there? I think it is just, I mean, I hate this word, but support group, to some respect, I think is what's good. And as I mentioned before, like just a little basic background knowledge on a field site if you're going to, or if you know, some things you want to know. And I think in those conversations that take place on a website, for starters, you know, eventually you can develop working relationships and friendships, which is really important. Oog and I finally met for the first time 2 weeks ago, and we've been emailing and on conference calls for 2 years almost. And so, you know, I think those kind of things come in time, and I think what we're trying to do is provide a forum for those types of things to start. And then eventually, you know, you'll get to know these people, or you remember having read something, you know, in one of the discussion forums or what have you, or you know, things like this would come up where might ask us to send, you know, a representative or something like that. So then we put it out an announcement to Apex saying, is anyone interested in this? So there's an opportunity for you. And if you're not a member of Apex, it might be harder for you to find, you know, those opportunities if you're trying to get in. If you're like, ooh, and you know, you're already in the mix of everything, then it's not so hard to find those opportunities. But if you're a new student, you know, and you don't know what to do next, I think this is the perfect place that would be able to provide some of those things for you.
Big is looking for a job in January, by the way. But
I also think, just as you were talking about new technology, I think that many of the researchers today will start to look to younger researchers because they know the technology, they are born up to the new technology, they know how to communicate. And this, I think, will be more and more that it is important to have the next generation with us when we do research today.
okay.
This is an answer to your question, Kevin. I think that Apex is also a networking opportunity. And it's particularly if we're trying to get into more interdisciplinary research, having an interdisciplinary group that will allow us to meet people from different disciplines, yet who still share a lot of the research interests that we may have, say cold regions, for instance. It's good to have that interdisciplinarity. And I was talking, I've talked to several people, senior scientists, who are involved in established organizations or projects that to some of us may seem like they've been around for a long time. But a lot of those projects or organizations got started because a couple of people were sitting around, sometimes over a beer, sometimes over a meal, whatever, just chatting and saying, you know, wouldn't it be a good idea if we could have this type of a project? And they might not have come together. It's just getting people together to be talking. And I think just as a networking opportunity, it's a worthwhile organization.
I didn't want to say that I'm against the idea. I just
No, I did not mean to be lecturing you.
I just wanted to throw
That's
that
why I
out
think that Jenny at the
there.
end, because I do think that, I mean to say that to everybody, I think that it will be quite valuable, and I'm pleased that it's this opportunity is available to me, and I hope, hopefully everybody else feels.
But I think that was really good. You
that
had the
as well.
questions that made us come back to the basics. So
Right.
that-
Well, because I brought this up to you last year when we talked about Kieran, and you know, if I'm going to join one of these organizations, ultimately I'm going to say, well, what can the organization do for me? What am I going to get out of this other than, you know, email chat or whatever? And you and I had talked about, well, let's let PERN be an avenue for possibly for a young researcher's project, permafrost researcher's project. That this would be a special award through NSF if they would grant this. We don't, you know, there could be a couple senior researcher mentors that kind of guide us, but really it's a bunch of unknown researchers, early career researchers that gather together and say, we want to do this for IPY. Give us a chance. And that chicken or the egg, you know, what comes first? Well, how do you do something without experience? How do you do something without credentials? And so we had talked about that last year. And so I'm thinking that same thing with Apex is, well, what can Apex do for me? And I kind of touched on this during my talk, but I'm very non-traditional. Number one, I'm starting very late. I'm not 20 years old. And also I kind of jumped into this government research lab. I'm not working my way up through a university. And so funding opportunities for me are extremely limited. Number one, our overhead is unbelievable, and people don't want really much to do with us currently because of our overhead. And the Army's not interested in cold regions anymore. We really have to be very, very creative in order to do what we want to do. And there are a few people that are at Krell that are extremely successful at doing that, and there are other people that just end up giving up and saying, I can't do this anymore. I'm just gonna work for other people. And so I'm looking for answers out of this group as to how can I avoid that trap, because I really want to do what I mentioned on my slide, and how can Apex help me do that? How can Purn help me do that? And that's what's going to drive me to join. So if you can address other issues like that people have, it makes people come to you, and then that keeps it going. That's the continuum.
Yeah,
That drives it on and on and on and
To
on.
address this, and this is why we've been brainstorming with Odd a little bit today on funding strategies, and I really think that, I mean, you know, in my dream world, you know, we do get Donald Trump to, you know, help sponsor us, or we get companies like REI, for example, that, you know, make these polar gear and stuff. Well, why don't you give us a couple grand and we'll put your logo on there, you know, we'll promote REI equipment or whatever you need us to do. But then that money, you know, somebody can, I read some DNA, I need to analyze it, I need a grant. Here, apply for this pot of money. So that would be ideal.
It would.
And that is a long way off. But I think, you know, maybe it's not a long way off. It just needs somebody to take that leadership role on to pursue that. And I think that might help to some of that extent. We've also, I just submitted a grant to NSF, and you know how the funding goes with that, but for mini grants of $500 to give to young researchers to develop in-class materials with students. So, you know, all these types of things might be available, and even though that's targeted toward an in-class experiment or materials, it can be used to collect data, you know, that you can use for your thesis, or for pilot data for a, you know, a grant or whatever. So we're trying, and suggestions on how to make it better are obviously, you know, we need them.
Doug, then
Yeah.
Karen?
I really agree with what Nicole said about the value of Apex. The value of Apex is to be a sort of platform for building a network with people who are at a similar stage in the career. And I think that is also the key to get funding for international projects, really. I mean, this is how you, it's not so much a question, I think, about what Apex can do for people. It's more how you can use Apex to get into contact with other people. I also think it's a much too big mission for Apex to provide, well, some kind of solution with the big funding agencies to get some kind of international funding for international projects. I think what Apex should do should be to provide this kind of funding information that is apparently available on the IASC website, and maybe adapt that funding information for early career scientists. Make it a little bit more clear, a little bit more basic. This is how you should do. Yeah, exactly, and possibly post some success stories on the website to look at other projects, how other early career scientists have built up international projects. So, the idea I got because I started to think how well the La Shipa project that we are having now. How did I build that? How did we go about? And I mean to have such stories. Now we have a funded international project, but we have been struggling with this structure that the funding is provided on a national basis, and we have worked very much with supporting each other in writing applications. When there is a funding opportunity in one country, we support the people in that country in the writing process, reviewing what they write, reading draft versions, coming with input, and referring back to successful. If someone succeeds with funding, then the next one who goes applying for funding can say, well, we got in Norway, now we have money for the project, and this, if we get it from Sweden too, we will go a long way towards our goals. I mean, basic stories like that on how a project was built would be very good to post at this website.
I have a charge for you. We actually do have a category on the discussion forum about funding and funding successes, and it would be absolutely fantastic if you could go on and write your story and share that information with everyone.
Funding information should not be only a long list of possible funds, because different disciplines can apply for different funding. If I only look at Sweden, we have the Science Council, Swedish Science Council. Everyone can apply from that, but there is also special funds that are only for social science and humanities, and these funding opportunities are not relevant for people in natural science, but to have sort of
techniques.
Yes, subdivisions for different funding opportunities.
I think that
exists actually.
Yeah.
That is how the IASC funding guide is divided.
Yeah, I'm sure. I haven't seen the IASC one, so.
Karen, I'll let you talk, but I cannot really say so. I think the IASC funding guide. I think it would be great if it could be maybe switched to a wiki kind of format, because it could benefit from. Could benefit of being expanded.
I apologize. The IASC website was put together some years ago with some resources I obtained, and it has not been updated for a while. It's just simply been transferred now to the new IASC website, but it does need quite a bit of work and revisiting, because I'm sure a lot of the links on there are rather old now. But yeah, that would be good, I think, to do that. Well, that actually is something that you could do. It's the young lady who built that website was just one of my undergraduates who happened to be in communications, and she did a pretty good job with not a lot of mentoring or advice from myself or Art, but she did a pretty good job. So it is something that could be revised quite readily, I think. It does need revision.
Karen, then what?
Well, the way we...
and then Karen, okay.
The way we went about it was to use the IASC council members to provide national information, and we added our national type of funding. But these people are in the over-established period, so that didn't have any personal interest in helping us. Whereas you are in the real user category, so you should think a little bit about it, and by talking to these organizations, you could mention it. May I also add another thing, that funding multinational undertakings projects are a major problem, clearly demonstrated during the IPY process. And as a consequence, you had started to discuss how could we create a legacy in which multinational polar projects could be funded in a different way. Now this is a very hard task, so it will take some time to solve it. But something may happen. We don't have the best people to really solve it, but there are mechanisms that should be further discussed. We have also had an idea, and I will speak to Pat, that should we create a young Polish scientist foundation handing out at least travel stipends or something that focused on the international aspect of it.
Sure.
For which,
I think you should.
for which you also have to really work very hard. I mean, there are various ways of doing it. It will require a substantial amount of money. The basic idea was to, if you're able to tap on real significant resources, have a foundation and a handout to the interest each year after some trip.
Can we put you in charge of doing that?
I put the Pat in charge.
I've been thinking about it, okay, but it will require a lot of work, but it's still a dream. Yeah.
You know, I just saw today that there was Roman Abramovich was on the Northern Research Forum.
Yeah.
It would be probably a good source for.
Yeah.
Just a question to get the right people. The reason for mentioning it is that now we have a brainstorm, and you should not only think for a tradition. You should be open to wild ideas or old ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Odd ideas, nice. Karen.
This is sort of from my own personal experience, and maybe you other young scientists feel the same way I do, but I very much feel like another benefit of having APEX and being a member of APEX, in addition to the networking and the you know, advice for jobs and things like that, I see it as a very useful venue to incorporate young scientists in the science planning process. It's one thing to sort of be involved in typical science conferences. I mean, you go to AGU when you're a grad student, you see your advisor. I mean, that sort of conference thing is a pretty typical thing. But from my perspective, the science planning process is a totally new world for me. And I had no idea all of these things that even existed. And you know, the last couple of years I've been learning more and more, but you know, coming from a typical graduate program, you know, within the US, you're not really exposed to these things. And so, you know, the first time that I really had exposure to all of this was back in Copenhagen at ICARP. And it was a wonderful experience, and it was really nice that there were young scientist scholarships and things like that to allow us to go. But there was no specific organization that brought us all together. So while it was a wonderful experience, we all kind of felt like we were floating around and didn't really have the cohort. And it was extremely intimidating because you go to these things, everybody knows one another, and you've been working together for decades and years and years and years. And you know, it's kind of an intimidating process. And I guess my feeling with APEX is that I hope, for instance, with subsequent ASSW meetings, that there's a specific APEX group meeting, and I'm sure you guys have probably talked about this before, that, you know, as young scientists, you're probably not going to be a member of the Polar Research Board, or an executive
The
member
IPY
of
Joint Committee? That would have been a great place for young scientists.
Maybe you are, but I guess to have a purpose when you do go to these science meetings and sort of have more experience to figure out how to integrate yourself and to have more of an opportunity to really play an active role in the process, so that, you know, when we do move forward and are no longer early career scientists, we know kind of how to carry things forward. But I guess, you know, away from the just regular science logistics stuff, the science planning, I think, is going to be a huge component to bringing early career scientists
And it's something.
Through Apex.
Yeah, but you're exactly right, when you're a grad student, you don't always
I had no
get
clue.
that. And so,
We
you
don't
know,
know.
things like this, you're exposed to it, and I think that's one thing.
But
to
can there be like
do.
another level of exposure? It sounds a little bit like that's what you're asking for, Karen, like where maybe we could be escorted into certain components of these executive sessions, like the Polar Research Board.
That's where the mentors come in.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. Well, let me pick up on something that Karen said, because in fact we probably need to close this out. Some of us have to take off.
Are you sick of us already? Is that what you're saying?
No, I just wanted to remind you, all of you, that we are hoping that you as a group will be able to report very briefly, 5 minutes tops, in the common day. And I know that some of you are going to be leaving very shortly. I really I hope that you'll be able to find one of your members.
Is anybody going to be here?
Who will be able to give a very brief presentation at the common day at the end of ASSW. As Karen just said, you know, try to get a message to ASSW that this was or was not worthwhile, that you would like to do it again or do it a little differently. How are you going to get feedback now to AOSB, IASC, and the people who have really helped sponsor this week?
We all have the evaluation forms that you were sent. That's really important that you fill those out and give them to either the organizers or to us, or somebody make sure that they get here, or even when you go back, fill them out and send them back to myself or Rachel. And you know, it's really important to give the feedback. And if anybody's going to be here on Tuesday, it would be great. If you wanted to, somebody lives in New Hampshire. I see 2 people that live in New Hampshire.
Actually, I live in Vermont.
I'm delegating. Dave told me that I am the word to
I mean,
delegate.
I don't want to be heavy about this, but it would
But
be
no,
very
you're
nice
exactly
if you
right.
could do that. I think, I realize that, you know, you've all got lots to do, and
I have my other
you're
job.
not all retired as I am and stay around here forever. But it would be nice if you identify someone who could do that. If all else fails, Odd or I will say something at the end of the closing of the meeting, but then we will be making up our opinion of what we've seen, and it would not be your collective opinion of the experience and where you want to go, and an opportunity for you to advertise Apex and to continue the process.
All right, you're right, but it's time to wrap it up now. And so just to say, I do agree 2,000% with you on what you said, and that's part of the continuum. And everyone wants to learn to talk Arctic, kind of thing. So I think that's part of the deal. And I think, like most of us here, have been quite often in this conference, Nicole, Karen, and stuff. But it's not a lot of people or young scientists that have been involved. So it needs to be officialized, formalized. There needs to be a mechanism, kind of thing. So then there needs to be things going on. We're gonna state that in a document. I've taken some notes today, so I'm gonna write them up and hopefully send them on Monday or tonight if I manage, but I don't think that'll be the case. But on Monday, and then so that someone can report on Tuesday on what we've said.
One PowerPoint will be plenty, okay?
Yeah, do you want a PowerPoint?
No, I'm just suggesting that you might go for one PowerPoint with a few bullets.
Yeah.
Which is...
Yeah, no, I can send it to anyone. I think the best is to send it to you, Pat, on Monday, and then if you find someone or
Well, I'm hoping you would elect someone who would do that.
Yeah.
But or if, as I said, if all else fails, Odd or I will,
just to be
will
safe.
flip a coin to do it. But it would be much better if it comes from you. Okay.
No, for sure. I think it was unfortunate that we weren't there.
We could videotape someone and we could play it.
There you go. Getting back to what you said, would you be willing to help us on the discussion board write your experience? And you know, I think that's what we need. And this goes back to Dog's comments. I think the success stories to show people that it's possible, and this is how you do it, and this is what happened to me. And I think those types of things are really going to be valuable. As this network of people move forward and we start sharing our experiences and the possibilities.
I think how it's worked in the past is that mentors have kind of picked people here and then really brought them into this world that we didn't know existed before, and so that
Yeah.
has certainly been helpful. But I definitely see Apex as sort of adding to those mentor
And a place
experiences.
where you can say to us, we need young scientists to be involved in the planning of this, and we put it out on our website, and, you build it, they will come, I think.
Is the, when you're talking about doing this, is it from 11:30 to 12:30?
Yeah, unfortunately, you're going to be really at the tail end of the whole pony show. Okay,
But is that the time
that
frame?
is the common day. And
So it'll be 12:30 in the
It'll be
afternoon?
very late in the morning.
Well, it's there on the.
Yeah, and unless we can pull strings and get you up front, it's likely to be very, very much at the tail end, and there may be, if we have another storm, we may lose a lot more people. It's the fact of life. Unfortunately, that one small line on the agenda is the last line on the agenda before Dr. Yellowitz makes his sort of final remarks on Summit Week. Yeah.
Well, I certainly could do something.
That would be wonderful if you could. And I stand by certainly to, look at that, but it's your report, not our report, okay? You could say.
Or like your name and your email. I just want to get a list of everybody who's here.
Collectively, you think is important.
Okay. And did you say it's a 5-minute?
Well, there won't be more room than 5 minutes. I think almost everyone reporting from their business meeting or within this sort of common reporting mode will probably only, if you just out the number of people, look at the amount of time, they're only going to get between 5 and 10 minutes tops. And because people speak rather too long, you know that when you're at the end of a list,
I'll get about 30 seconds.
You're lucky if you get 30 seconds, yes.
We can help you put something together too, obviously.
That'd be great.
Well, I need to compile that, and I do that on the airplane, and send to
Okay.
Well, this is your first Arctic Science Summit Week, and we have put out this form for all the young scientists to comment on and make proposals for improvements. Now, you get this very short window at the end, and you will not be able to communicate everything that may be on the form. However, there is an international coordinating group for Arctic Science Summit Week, and for those people, that is Sarah Bowden, Volker Ackel, and pick one of those and get the full material to them, because that will be the opportunity to improve the next one. But the next Arctic Science Summit Week will be in Sylvia, I believe, Committee of Russia. So there may be another community of you being present. But at least they need some good feedback from you how to improve this very concept.
Yeah, so I mean, just think just beyond the getting 2 words in at the end of the conference, as Art said, the organizers of Summit Week want to know.
They'll hear from us, don't worry.
I think we realized there was a commitment to involve us in the process, to make that perennial,
Yes.
and to involve us into the science planning process and to get people on board.
Correct.
So now, the point is how to make it next year, and we have to say that we commit to be part of the organization or to feed into the organizing process, and that's what's going to come out in the document that we're going to send, I think, to Volker, Sarah, and probably Colin. Is going to be kind of, I think we don't want to forget the SCAR people to say that.
So just a few final words. Thank you all very much for coming and participating in this, and I'm glad to hear that there's some excitement, and it's not just Uger and I trying to concoct the world or concoct a scheme to take over the world, which we're also working on, but that might take a little bit more time, I'm not sure. But please, feedback. The website is active and it's ready, and we just need people to participate, and if you could write your success stories, that would be great. And
Well, I'm
just
sure mine is not the only one. There's
no,
probably
but
more
but
people.
but that's, somebody has to start it, right? And if they see one up there, then somebody else is going to do it too. So we just need, people to start and to help, and it would be great if you could do that. Thanks again to our mentors. It was great. And Dave, thanks for encouraging the creation of Apex. We absolutely appreciate that and the IPY support. So thank you as well.